Yeah. So let's start this colloquium for today. So आज हमारे पास है and we have been joined by Dr. Usman Muzaffar. He got his master degree from Qaid Azam University and then did his PhD in physics from University of Science and Technology of China recently. So today he would talk about the how can you predict the design of advanced energy materials. So let's hear from Dr. Usman Muzaffar. Ji, if you can start.
Thank you, sir, for the introduction, and I would also like to thanks for the giving me opportunity. The title of my presentation is the predictive design of advanced energy materials. From this title, you can expect in the next 40 to 50 minutes I will talk about related to the energy applications. Actually, energy is before I start, I want to mention that at any moment, if you have some questions, you can interrupt me and ask me the questions. It would be nice for me. So the energy is a forefront topic of a condensed matter physics, and just due to the ever increasing due to the increasing the population. So in this context, the ever increasing energy demand in human life emphasizes the need of clean and renewable energy resources, and we want new energy resources that should be have a energy dissipation and decrease in energy dissipation as much as possible. So there are a number of physical phenomena related to energy applications. When we talk about energy application, we have solar energy, photocatalysis, and thermoelectricity, and so on. And then when we talk about the transport, we have electricity, superconductivity, and many more. So for the thermoelectric materials, we know that they can convert the heat into the electricity, and the superconducting materials, they have the capacity, the ability to transform to transfer this energy from one place to another place without any dissipation. So as we are living in the world where lot of the portion of energy is lost just because of the resistance. So how about if we connect these two systems together so that we can form the superconductive thermoelectric generator? The idea just is just because to reduce the energy dissipation. So this thermoelectric generator can transform can convert the heat into electrical energy. Then it can transfer this energy from one place to another place without any dissipation. Obviously, it will work at the low temperature. It should be in the superconducting regime. So we are expecting if we construct this one, then it can save our energy due to the resistance loss. So there is another physical phenomenon known as the topological insulators. These materials, we know that they have a high carrier mobility. In these materials, they in the bulk they act as a topological act as insulators, and in the surface they have a zero gapless surface state, just because of the backscattering free surface states. So that's why they have the high carrier mobility. So if we connect these two materials together so that we can exploit the high mobility in the thermoelectricity, then we can get the high efficiency. So if we connect these topological insulators with the superconducting materials, then we can these two materials together, we can get the topological superconducting materials. So we know that this kind of materials, they have the and Majorana fermions, they can host this one. So these Majorana fermions are highly desirable for the quantum computing. So these are the two. So to realize all of these properties, growth science is the foundation. I mean, if we want to realize all of these broad applications, growth science is the point. We need to grow the materials. So the my talk is mainly consist of three parts. In the first part, I will discuss about the potential growth of black phosphorin, in which I will in this project I will discuss the what's are the disadvantages, what's are the I mean the challenges in this field, and then I will discuss the what's the advancement has been done in the growth field of the black phosphorin. In the second part, I will discuss the role of non-trivial topology in thermoelectricity. And in the third, we have identified the CSB-based superlattice structures, and I will discuss the topology in this system. And in the end, I will conclude my talk. So the first part is related to the growth of black P. For many years, it was thought that a single layer cannot exist. So in 2004, Professor Gaim and Professor Novoselov, they demonstrated that graphene can exist independently with high crystallinity. So they use the Scotch tape method, just like you put the Scotch tape on the bulk of the graphite, and then you peel off. Yes, just like a peel off, and with the tape you can have a one layer, two layer graphene and other materials. So then they characterized these layers, and they found that they are stable. And based on this demonstration, they were awarded Nobel Prize in 2010. And initially they produced a graphene using the Scotch tape method, but nowadays graphene is produced on can be produced on a substrate. Actually, if we want to grow thin films are monolayer in a mass production wise, we need to grow the substrate. Which is highly desirable for the practical applications. So since the discovery of graphene, there are a number of 2D materials that has been synthesized. I think maybe 2000 2D materials has been synthesized so far. So these 2D materials includes that layered 2D materials database, which includes WSE2, MOSE2, and so on. And we can have a elemental 2D materials, which include the phosphorine, silicene, germanium, and sternonine, and so on. And the third one is the we can get the 2D materials from the bulk semiconductors. And the fourth one is the fourth is the 2D material predicted by our research group. And this one is the actually this is the CSB bulk phase. In bulk, CSB has a hexagonal structure, and using the isovalency rule, we transform this structure into FEIC like layered structure, and we predicted that it can be transformed in other phases. So we published this paper in PRL, and the verification of experimentally verification of this paper, this system is under review in Science. In the later stage, I will discuss this more details. So so far we have more than 2000 2D materials in this growth field. So as I mentioned, every 2D material has its own characteristic. So when we talk about the graphene, graphene has a high carrier mobility, but unfortunately it does not have a band gap. So the other TMT materials, they have a large band gap, but it does not have a high carrier mobility. So in this context, the black phosphorin, it's a good candidate. Just because it has a high carrier mobility and it has a thickness dependent band gap. We can tune the band gap by using the number of layers. So it has a high superior electronic properties. So we can exploit these electronic properties in different fields. I mean, we can exploit this high carrier mobility in the thermoelectric efficiency. So it has been predicted that the black phosphorine is a good candidate for the thermoelectric materials, as well as the magnetism can be induced in the phosphorine nanoribbons. So black phosphorine can be induced. Magnetism can be induced in the nanoribbons. So this black phosphorine can be used in the spintronic applications. So you can see that it's a good candidate of the thermoelectric material. It can be used in spintronics and many more applications it have. So it means that but the thing is that we are producing this graphene black phosphorine by using the exfoliation or exfoliation methods. But in that method, the problem is that we don't have the large mass production. If we want to get the more application, if we go in the practical applications, we need large area thin films. So we need to focus on the grow the black phosphorine on a substrate. So this is the motivation that we are looking to grow black phosphorine on a substrate. So in previously, maybe in 2017, the same research in our research group, we considered the number of substrates, which includes barium arsenide, boron phosphide, copper and gold and gallium nitride. We try to identify the good substrate for the black phosphorine, but unfortunately, none of these substrate is suitable to grow black phosphorine. And actually, I already mentioned that our motivation was to identify a good substrate for the growth of black phosphorine. But fortunately or unfortunately, we find that among these substrates, the copper, gold, and gallium nitride can be readily stabilized the blue phosphorine. The blue phosphorine has almost a similar crystal structure, hexagonal structure like a graphene. But the black phosphorine has a corrugated structure. I mean, the corrugation is there. So then we further confirm this one. We did the molecular dynamics simulation. Actually, this technique, we create an environment and we gave the temperature in our simulation. And just because of the temperature, the atoms vibrate due to the thermal energy. And then we recorded the free energy, total free energy of the system. And we find that within the temperature environment, we find that the blue phosphorine can be readily stabilized on the gallium nitride substrate. You can see that after the 50 picosecond, the system blue phosphorine has a very ordered structure. But when we put the black phosphorine on a gallium nitride, you can see that there is a distortion appeared. It means that this structure, when in the temperature regime, in the temperature environment, this system is not as stable. So this is not as suitable. So eventually we find that eventually we ended this project as a byproduct, and we published this paper. Luckily, we published this paper in PRL. So in the same year, we find that an experimental report of blue phosphorine grown on AU on a gold, which is one of the predicted substrate in our paper. So this paper is appeared in Nanolator in 2016. This shows this is the predicted of substrate. So this shows the power of the predictability of the density functional theory. So we use this tool as a reliable tool to predicting the materials, especially in the growth field. So here is another attempt made by the Professor Yangwei Chang from Singapore University, which is a well-known professor in the growth field, and they considered the number of substrates to grow the black phosphorine on a substrate. And unfortunately, he also didn't find some physically realistic material as a substrate. He didn't find that one. But then he he ended this project with the conclusion that if the interlayer coupling between the substrate and a monolayer is in the too weak regime or too strong regime, they both not good to stabilizing the monolayer. He concluded that the 2D material, if someone want to grow the 2D material on a substrate, the interaction between them should be in a moderate regime. Too weak, too strong, not good. Moderate regime should be a suitable candidate in the CVD, in the chemical vapor deposition technique. So so the black phosphorine on a fertile substrate is still a daunting challenge in the growth field. So for this standing challenge, we this time we propose a straightforward yet a conceptually intuitive approach by three guiding principle. First is the structural similarity, that we focus on this one, the structure similarity and the isovalency rule. The third one is obviously a straightforward, and it should be the minimum lattice mismatch. So we know that a black phosphorine has a orthorhombic layered structure. You can see from this figure, it's a layered structure and has an orthorhombic structure. And to fulfill this condition, when we look into the periodic table, you can see that group 4 to 6, this one and this one, you can see GES, GESE, SNS and SNSE. They have a, you can see from this one, they have a very similar structure to the black phosphorine. You can see this one, this is a very similar structure. So they also have a same valence electron. Same valence electron means in the valence electron, they have in the outermost shell, they have the how many electrons they have. So they lie in the fourth and sixth group. It means they in a whole unit cell they have 10 electrons. So 10 means which is equal to 2 times of a phosphorus. So phosphorus is lie in the fifth group. So group 4 to 6, they fulfill this condition, orthorhombic layered structure as well as the similar valence electrons. So actually this idea we took this from the great invention of ancient China. In Chinese people have 4 inventions. First is the paper making. The second one is we usually use the direction to determine the direction. We usually use the compass, gunpowder, and the printing. These 4 inventions are made by the Chinese people. So by considering this invention, that is the printing, based on this idea, we identify this one, group 4 to 6 substrate. Actually, for example, we have a die, and then we put the paper on this die. The particular content will appear on the paper, just like a photocopy machine. We put the paper on this one on the photocopy machine, and just because of the layers, we can get the photocopies similar to the original one. So based on this one, you can see this is the substrate. This is the substrate: 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layer, 4. And when we put the black phosphorine on this substrate, we are expecting that this black the structure is similar. The isovalency valence electron is similar in these systems. So this substrate will just consider the black phosphorine as another layer. So we are expecting that the substrate will not interact too much with the black phosphorine. It will not influence too much. So we are expecting that this will this will help in stabilizing the black phosphorine. So to verify the conjecture, we consider then we use the density functional theory method, and then we calculated the structural parameters of these surfaces. I mean the GES, GESE, SNS, and SNSE, and you can see the lattice parameter of B of these surfaces. They are reasonably compared with the black phosphorine. It's matched well. with the black phosphorine, but when we look into the A parameter, it's a significantly enhanced compared to the black P. You can see 3.3, 3.6, and 4.16. It's significantly enhanced. So in order to match these surfaces with the black phosphorine, we have to construct the superstructures. So uh, if we consider superstructures, I mean, if we consider the black phosphorine as a 5x4 supercell of black P and a 4x4 of SNSE, I'm trying to compensate this number with this one. If we multiply this one with the 4 with the 5 and multiply this one with 4, then it matched well. So you can see the latest mismatch between along A axis is just 1.31%, and along the B axis also very 0 point something. So this small lattice mismatch can be easily adjustable in the experiments. So these are the relaxed structure of black phosphorine on SNSE, blue phosphorine on SNSE, and the total energy calculation results reveal that the binding energy of black P is relatively higher than that of the binding energy of blue P. It means what? It means that black phosphorine prefer to stay on black phosphorine-like structure. So partially it fulfill our expectations. So to further confirm our conjecture, we did the molecular dynamic simulations, as I previously mentioned, that we artificially we gave the temperature, we put that system in a temperature at particular temperature, and then we recorded the binding, recorded the vibrations of the atoms, and recorded the total energy of the system. You can see after a 5 picosecond, the atoms move, the fluctuation is very small in this temperature in the case of black phosphorine. But in the case of blue phosphorine, you can see the atoms moves more. So it has a more energy fluctuations. So more energy fluctuations means it's less stable. Less fluctuation means the system is more stable. So if we compare this system, black P with the blue P, the black P is very stable structure. So from this analysis, we can conclude that a black P is highly probable to be synthesized experimentally. So as we in the CVD growth, I mean in the epitaxial growth, when we want to grow something, we need to give the source in the gas phase. So so that we can deeper understand about this black phosphorine, we did the atomistic growth mechanisms, and then we put the one phosphorus atom on the substrate, and then so that we can estimate the mobility of the atoms. When we put the one atom phosphorus on the substrate, and check the diffusion barriers along the zigzag direction, this phosphorus atoms needs to cross the barrier around about 1 eV, and along the zigzag direction, these atoms have to have to cross the barrier almost 0.6 eV, which is I mean, along the armchair direction, it will move faster than that of the zigzag direction. So when we put the atom, it will prefer to move in the armchair direction. So moreover, there is also anisotropic behavior, because this is a high diffusion barrier. This one requires a low diffusion barrier. So anisotropy is there. So more interestingly, when we put two phosphorus atoms, we find that they prefer to form a dimer. Instead they stay apart. I mean, they prefer the dimer, and they have a higher binding energy than that of the two single atoms, two separate atoms. So then we calculate the diffusion barrier, and we find that the diffusion barrier of dimer is much lower than that of the monomers. You can see here the diffusion barrier is maximum is 1 and minimum is 0.6 eV, but in this case, dimers requires or just only need to cross the barrier is just 0.4 eV. So it means that dimer can move more faster than that of the monomer. So moreover, if we look into the closely that the along the zigzag and along the armchair direction, they move isotropically. So it means that if we give the more and more atoms, they will form dimers and move faster and form a black phosphorine. So this is the first substrate on which copper substrate pp attraction. Pp attraction means the two phosphorus atoms attract each other and then they form a dimers. Behavior is observed after the graphene. This attraction is also observed in the graphene. In the graphene case, in the copper substrate. So this is the first case in the black phosphorine case. So these are the electronic properties, band structure of a monolayer, black p monolayer, and you can see that there is a band gap, direct band gap at the gamma point, and in the SNSC it is a indirect band gap with the band gap of 1.6 eV. But after making the heterostructure of black p and blue p, the band gap decreased to 1 eV. But the interesting thing of this heterostructure is that it forms the type 2 band alignment. As you can see, it can be characterized from this one. You can see in the total density of state at the conduction band minima, the dominance is from the black phosphorine, and from the valence band, the density of state is mainly dominated by the SNSC. So this is the characterization of the type 2 band alignment. So these are the conduction band minima of the black p, and this is the valence band maximum of the black p, and you can see that they are lower in energy than that of the SNSE. So the electron in the conduction band minimum of black p and a hole in the valence band maximum of the SNSE, if they have strong enough energy, they can form an electron hole pair. And you can see that the electron hole pair is highly desirable for the practical applications. So as I mentioned earlier, the main guiding principle of our study was first is the structure similarity. The second one is the isovalency rule. And you can see the enabling power of the structure similarity and the isovalency rule was already reported in a very experimental report which appeared in ACS Nano. Actually, we convey our message to these are our experimental collaborators. We gave this idea, we convey this message to our collaborators, and then they published this paper in ACS Nano. It means that then they further tried to identify SB on SB. Further confirmed that by synthesizing the SB BI monolayered, allied monolayer, and the bismuth monolayers on a group of 4 to 6 substrates. So it means that the idea we have given, it's just not a specific to single element. It may be valid for the other systems as well. So our idea is partially supported by the experiments. Partially mean that actually we did the calculation for the black phosphorine. They are still trying to grow the black phosphorine, but in the meanwhile they get the SB phase. So this idea is partially supported from the experiments. So hopefully the black phosphorine will also grow. So this is the summary of the first part. At SNSE is ideal candidate to promote the epitaxial growth of black p. Black p is stable on SNSE, while blue p is thermodynamically unstable. Then two phosphorus atoms not only can form a dimer on SNSE, but can also diffuse isotropically and much faster than monomer. And the black p SNSE heterostructure exhibits a type 2 band alignment with the novel optoelectronic applications. So one liner statement is that the black p like substrate promotes the epitaxial growth of black p. So Actually, initially we submitted this paper in PRL, and we did fight with the referee, and almost 1.5 year, and eventually it's published in PRB. So the next is related to the role of non-trivial topology in thermal electricity. We know that consider we have a semiconducting material, and when we apply that, when we create a temperature difference across the material, it creates a potential difference. So this potential difference is known as the Seebeck effect, and how much temperature difference will how much potential difference will create in one Kelvin is known as the Seebeck coefficient. So the efficiency of the thermoelectric material can be mainly judged by using this formula. This formula consists of 3 parameters. The first is the Seebeck coefficient, Seebeck coefficient, electrical conductivity. This has correspond to the Seebeck coefficient. This one correspond to the electrical conductivity, and K is the thermal conductivity. And if we want to enhance the efficiency of efficiency, we need to enhance the power factor. This is the this is the power factor, which is the product of the Seebeck coefficient and the electrical conductivity, and we need to decrease the thermal conductivity. But unfortunately, these 3 parameters are interconnected with each other. You can see from this figure, this is the carrier concentration as a function of the ZT. ZT is the power factor. ZT is the figure of merit, the efficiency. So with the increase of the carrier concentration, you can see that the electrical conductivity increases, while the this is the electrical conductivity, and while the Seebeck coefficient is decreases. So one increases, the other decreases. So the power factor, the product of these two, will be lie somewhere here, which will be the trade-off between these two quantities. So on the other hand, when we talk about the thermal conductivity, which is the directly proportional to the with the increase of the carrier concentration, the thermal conductivity is also increases. So we need to decrease this factor, increase this factor, and need to decrease this factor. But they are all interconnected with each other. So then if they are connected with each other, then how we can increase these factors, how we can decouple these parameters from each other. Actually, ZT consists of 2 parts. One is the electronic part, and other is the phononic part. Electronic part means total thermal conductivity. We know that which consists of 2 parts: the lattice thermal conductivity and the electrical thermal conductivity. So if we want to increase the if we want to increase the ZT, we need, this is the electronic part. So we need to mainly focus on this factor. So you can see the electrical conductivity is directly proportional to the carrier concentration. Carrier concentration is directly proportional to the electrical conductivity, and this carrier concentration is also inversely proportional to the Seebeck coefficient, as I mentioned previously. So if we want to optimize the carrier concentration, we usually do the doping, gating, etc. And moreover, the effective mass is inversely proportional to the conductivity, and this factor mass is directly proportional to the Seebeck coefficient. So we also need to optimize this parameter. So we usually do the band engineering, which includes the band convergence, band flattening, multiple bands, and resonant levels, etc. So for the phononic part, we need to do the phonon engineering, which includes the Bessel equations, multiple scatterings, bonding, rattling, etc. And intrinsically, we can also reduce the lattice thermal conductivity by introducing the heavy elements, so that they cannot move more. It should be the heavy element, then we can get the reduce the lattice thermal conductivity. So my research is mainly focused on the power factor, the electronic part of the system, electronic part of the ZT. So the first strategy I used in my papers is the resonant levels. So what is the resonant levels? Actually, consider we have a system, assume PBTE system is a semiconducting system. And when we do the doping, when we do the external doping, I mean the thallium atom at the site of the PB site, at the PB, then it distort the distortion, it creates the distortion in the density of the state. This is the schematic representation, and you can see this is the undoped density of state, and this is the distortion in the density of state. It's due to the external dopants. So larger the sharper the peak of this distortion, sharper will be the effective mass and sharper will be the Seebeck coefficient. So another strategy to enhance the Seebeck coefficient, to optimize the Seebeck coefficient effective mass, is the band convergence. Consider we have a SNTE system, and it consists of two subvalence bands. I mean the light hole band that lie in the L point, and the heavy hole band at the sigma point. So you can see that the heavy hole band is far away from the Fermi level, so it is not contributing too much in the transport. So we need to do the doping so that we can reduce the energy difference between these two bands, so that this band also contribute in the Seebeck coefficient. This technique works only for the at the room temperature, and this technique works for the high temperature. So if we combine these two techniques in a one system, then we can get the high efficiency over a broad range of the materials. In my advanced functional material, I used these two techniques in a one mesh system, and I use this in one system. So the third technique is the bipolar effect. I mean, usually in the small band gap semiconductors, at the high temperature, we have the majority carriers and the minority carriers. So at high temperature, both the majority and minority start conduction. So for the Seebeck coefficient for the electrons, they have a negative Seebeck, and for the positive holes, they have the positive Seebeck coefficient. When they start conduction, they mitigate each other. I mean, they cancel the effect of each other. So as a net, we have a very small Seebeck coefficient. So to get the high efficiency, high Seebeck coefficient, we need to enlarge the band gap, so that at high temperature, only the majority carriers can take part in the conduction, and we can get the high ZT. So as I mentioned in the starting slides of the ZT of the thermoelectrics, electrical conductivity is directly proportional to the ZT. ZT is the efficiency. So and topological insulators have a high electrical conductivity. So it should be expected that the efficiency of the thermoelectric material should be high. But in this context, we have a conflicting findings between the theory and the experiment. And so here is an example of the theory in which supports the non-trivial topology, which supports that a non-trivial topology is beneficial for the thermal electricity. They consider Bi2-Te3 as a prototypical example, and this Bi2-Te3 has a orthorhombic layered structure which consists of the quintuple layers. One quintuple layer has a five layers of Bi and Te, and in this paper, the authors reported that the one quintuple layer is a topologically trivial. It's not a topological insulator, but because it has a fundamental band gap. So they found that if we consider the three quintuple layer, this system is topologically non-trivial. You can see that there is a Drake cone type behavior. You can see that there is a gapless surface states. So then they calculate the transfer properties, and they found that in the trivial regime, one quintuple layer and two quintuple layer, the maximum ZT is 1. in the trivial regime, it's a 1, but when in the non-trivial regime, the maximum ZT is 2. So this paper supports that non-trivial is good for the thermal activity. So here is another paper of the experimental report in which they consider a PB-SNTE system. A PB-SNTE system is a topologically crystalline insulator. Then they do the doping of sodium. Sodium is a chemical doping. Intentionally, they do this one so that they want to try to break down the crystalline symmetry. So when they do the doping of sodium in this matrix PB-SNTE system, and they calculated and they demonstrated the band gap, checked the band gap, and they found that with the doping of sodium, the band gap increases. So they found that after the doping of 1%, I think maybe 2%, the system is not in the non-trivial regime. They make a transition from a trivial regime to non-trivial regime to a trivial regime, and this system without the doping of sodium, this system has a just a ZT value of 0.4, and but after but in the trivial regime, the system has a maximum ZT almost of 1. So in this they said that to get the high ZT value, we need to break the crystalline symmetry so that we can get the high Seebeck coefficient and a high ZT. So the question arises is that is non-trivial topology is beneficial for optimally enhanced, because one says a non-trivial topology is good, one says non-trivial topology is not a good. So the question is, now is non-trivial topology beneficial for optimally enhancing the thermoelectrics? To answer this question, then we consider SNTE as a prototypical example, and SNTE is a topologically crystalline insulator in which the mirror symmetry is preserved. So SNTE is also a good thermoelectric material, but to get the high performance, we need to do the doping, external doping, so that we can get the high ZT value. But when we do the external doping, as I showed earlier, they dope the sodium atom, and with the doping of the sodium, it will make a transition from non-trivial to trivial. So but when we do the external doping, they may perturb the local mirror symmetry. So to get the high ZT, we need to do the doping, but such doping can perturb the mirror symmetry. So how about the intrinsic defect? Because intrinsic defects mean we can do the anti-side doping, we can create that vacancies, because such kind of dopants they cannot they are more compatible, they cannot they preserve the original crystalline symmetry. So in our case, we consider these these intrinsic defects, and we find that the formation energy of the anti-site defect is lower than that of the vacancies. So anti-site defect can be created experimentally. Then we calculate the dynamical stability, and you can see that the Fnon frequencies, they are all positive. So it means that it's dynamically stable. So energetically and dynamically, we can create the anti-site defects. So experimentally, we can create these anti-site defects in this system. So this is the band structure of the SNTE system in pure band structure. You can see it has a fundamental band gap with the value of 1 eV, and as I mentioned previous, this one has a 2 subvalence bands. At the L point, it has a light hole band, and at the sigma, it has a heavy hole band. So between these two bands, there is a large band gap. So we need to do the doping so that we can reduce the energy gap between these two bands. So after introducing the anti-side defects in this system, and we find that with the doping, 1%, 1%, 2%, 3%, or 5%, you can see that the slope of this band, this is the L point, L point light hole band, and this is the heavy hole band. You can see that the slope is decreases. It means that they are merging, they are coming closing to each other. More simplistically, you can see that with the increasing of the anti-side doping, the band, the energy difference between these two bands decreases significantly. And this band, this green one, represents the fundamental band at the L point. It, with the increase of the anti-side, it is significantly enhanced. So these two parameters, these two parameters are good for the Seebeck coefficient, as I mentioned previously. So then we calculated, then we unfolded the band structure. Actually, when we do the doping, we need to construct the superstructures, supercells. So to directly see the band structure, to directly compare the anti-side doped band structure with the pristine case, we unfolded the band structure so that we can directly compare this one. If we compare the pristine case SNTE and the anti-side doped case, you can see there appear a extra band. You can see there is no band. Here is no band gap, but no band. And there, so in the anti-side doped case, there appeared a band. So this band corresponds to the resonance level, as I mentioned previously. So if we compare this anti-side doped system with the well-studied indium doped case system, so you can see there is a resonance level is there, but the signal is very weak. So as I mentioned previously, sharper the peak of the dense resonance level, larger the Seebeck, larger the effective mass, larger will be the Seebeck coefficient. So we are expecting, compared to this system, this is a well-studied, well-known studied system. And so compare this system, our predicted system will be the would have a larger Seebeck coefficient. So in anti-side doping, we achieved three techniques in a single system. One is the significantly reduce the band gap between the subvalence bands. We significantly reduce the energy gap, and we have significantly enhanced the fundamental band gap, as well as we have the resonance level. So these three conditions are good for the enhanced Seebeck coefficient. So to directly confirm this conjecture, we calculated the Boltzmann transport theory, and you can see that this is along this direction, it's a Seebeck coefficient, and this is the power factor. So the solid line represents the Seebeck coefficient, and the dotted line represents the power factor. And compared to the doped case, compared to the undoped case and the well-studied indium doped SNTE system, our predicted system is have a much higher power factor. So the well-studied system is published in PNAS paper. So these are the transfer properties at the 300 Kelvin temperature. Then we studied the Seebeck coefficient at the high temperatures, and compared this data with the indium doped SNTE system. And in all these three systems, anti-side doped system has a higher Seebeck coefficient. So these are the topological properties. As I mentioned earlier, the SNTE is intrinsically already a topologically non-trivial, and after the doping of anti-side doping, 3% doping, the system still remains in the non-trivial regime. And in the indium doped SNTE system, the system is also in the non-trivial regime. So yeah, yes.
Can you please wind up your talk in, let's say, 3 to 4 minutes, because we are running out of time.
How many minutes we have?
We had 55 minutes for the talk, so yeah.
Okay.
Maybe you can take 5 minutes. Yes, you can take 5 minutes to find it up.
Okay. So so here we can conclude that to improve the thermoelectrics, the improvement of thermoelectric does not require the breakdown of the topological properties. So here is the experimental verification of our conclusion, which appeared in Nature Material. They considered a PBSE system. This PBSE has a very similar crystal structure as a SNTE system, but this PBSE is a intrinsically topologically trivial case. But with the increasing of the pressure, they found that up to 2 gigapascal, the system the conductivity is not increases significantly, but beyond this one, it is significantly enhanced. And after reaching the peak at the 3.5 gigapascal, is significantly decreased. So they found that this is the area at this temperature pressure regime, the system is in the non-trivial regime. And then they calculated the ZT value in this regime, and they found that the maximum ZT is around 1.7, which is much larger than the I mean atmospheric pressure. So so from here we can conclude that the proper utilization of topologically non-trivial surface state can indeed enhance the thermoelectricity. I mean the topologically surface state are good, but it should be the in the proper but it should be close to the Fermi level, so that it can take part in the transport properties. So this is the summary of this project, that in this paper we try to explain why enhanced thermoelectric performance observed in indium doped SNTE system. And next we show that the indium doping alone is able to effectively engineer the band structure, resulting in much enhanced thermoelectric performance. And moreover, the SNT interstate doping preserve the non-trivial topology after the interstate doping. So this is the take-home message, that a proper utilization of the non-trivial topology surface state can indeed enhance the thermoelectricity. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, great, Osman. So nice, so some really nice results and sharing these studies with us. So, are there questions from Osman? So the PhD students, yeah, there was okay. Some famous names are appearing and disappearing. So, Acha Osman, so like when you do the modeling, yes. So, so what considerations are in your mind? Like, how do you start with? For example, these are like you see that, okay, these are the requirements of the structure I want to write. Like this must be the band bending or band flattening, and this must be. So how do you come up with a structure which should have those properties? Do you go to that like a structure which demonstrate more or less the same band structure and all the topological properties? How do you come up with a structure based on those
I mean,
properties?
how I can get the structures?
Yes, and compositions which give rise to that kind of response.
Actually, DFT is just it's just is just based on the predictions. We need to try hit and trial rules. Obviously, some rules are there, but we need to do the hit and trial method. We try this one, it works, it's okay. If it's not, do something, think something else. It's just a hit and trial rule. I mean, and just like in my first paper that appeared in PRB, we have a very clear intention in this paper. Based on this one, we have a very clear intention that possibly it will this idea will works. So and eventually we successfully that found that it works that one. But without the modeling, without the calculations, we can't say anything.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So, a lot of people like, there's a lot of chatter about this black phosphorus. So,
Hmm.
so why is it like so? Like, why is so much interesting
Sorry sir, आवाज थोड़ी कम आ रही है आपकी।
the the black phosphorus है, इसमें इतना like why people are demonstrating so much interest?
सॉरी सॉरी सर, आपकी आवाज थोड़ी कम आ रही है, अगर आप माइक थोड़ा पास कर लें तो।
हेलो, आपको आवाज आ रही है अब?
जी जी सर, अब आवाज आई जी सर।
हाँ ठीक है, हाँ। तो जो ब्लैक फॉस्फोरस है, why so much interest in this material all of a sudden?
Uh, why we are so much interested in this material?
Yeah.
Here I mentioned that actually every material जो है वो have some advantages and disadvantages. In this slide you can see that the graphene has a high carrier mobility, but it doesn't have the band gap. So if we're looking for the semiconducting industry, graphene cannot fulfill the conditions. But if we want to get the large band gap, we look into the TMD materials. I mean, transition metal dicalcologenides. They have a large band gap, but it does not have a high carrier mobility. So black phosphorine, I mean, lie in between these two systems. So it has a high carrier mobility, has and also a thickness dependent band gap. I mean, a 4 layer has a different band gap, 5 layer, 6 layer, 7 layer. Every layer has a different band gap, just like MOS2. So depending on the conditions, what kind of requirements you are, what kind of I mean conditions you are looking for, you can tune the band gap.
Okay, and does it have like just like TMDCs? Does it have the spin orbit interaction as well in this, or no? Because you have phosphorus, and so how big is phosphorus? No.
TMD materials, they have the spin orbit interaction is there. Spin orbit interaction actually depend on the I mean how many what's the weight of the element. A larger element, I mean larger mean the heavy element have a large effect of the spin orbit coupling. So I mean if you can MOS2 MOSE2, you can see the Rashba effect, something Rashba effect, as well as we can observe in Rashba effect types in MS2 WS2 something like that.
And so do you have so is there a way to control, is there spin control in this system or not?
Spintronic system.
Yes, in black phosphorus, or it doesn't have any such
In the black
uh,
phosphorine.
yes.
Black phosphorine, you can see this paper. I mean, intrinsically, black phosphorine is not a magnetic, but by considering the by constructing the edges in the zigzag direction in the nano ribbons, then we can induce the magnetism in this system. Maybe another way we can put the cobalt atom. I mean, cobalt is a magnetic, and then I mean this is the black phosphorus, and then we put one atom on the surface of the black phosphorus, then magnetism can be induced in this system. Actually depend on the difference, depend on what kind of properties you are looking for. So many strategies are there. In this paper they induce the magnetism.
Okay, okay, so good. So are there any questions from students?
Actually,
Yes.
I have intentions to collaborate somewhere in. I mean, collaboration. Do some collaborations with the research groups so that we can work together or something like that one. Something like that one. So
Okay.
if
Yeah.
someone have close work with mine, he can contact me or something like that one, so we can work together some इस तरह
So you
कुछ.
can do DFT studies on two-dimensional materials.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would be definitely interested in
Hmm.
this. Yeah. So of course we are not doing these fancy materials, but more traditional TMDCs.
Hmm.
Yes. So that's something I would be interested in.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Fancy.
I mean these not
Idea,
fancy.
not DFT mean DFT. We can do everything, everything, whatever we want.
Yes.
DFT requires idea. In papers, in journals, they expect from us idea. If you have the idea, you can easily publish the paper using the DFT. If you don't have the idea, otherwise they just throw back to your paper on the face. Actually, I received it many times. In DFT, the details requires the idea. It's a bit
No,
difficult.
it's just we need DFT to explain our experimental results.
Yeah.
So,
If we have a collaboration with the experiment with the DFT, it's more better. I mean, it's a very helpful.
yeah,
Mm.
we do experiments. So yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Actually, I have read your paper, the APL paper that recently you published this one. That's a very interesting paper.
Okay. Okay. So if there, so I would definitely get in touch with you, Usman. So
Sure.
thank you
Thank you, sir.
for giving talk, sharing such nice results with us and such nice studies. So maybe it was a bit more technical for a lot of the students though, but
Maybe.
yeah, nevertheless,
Maybe.
so, nevertheless, yeah, nice physics here. So yeah, thank you again, and thank you everyone for joining in this colloquium. So yeah, I will get contact with you, Usman,
Okay.
about
Thank you, sir.
some. Okay, thank you all. Yeah, Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.